Up next is the Producers Roundtable. Please welcome to the stage Susan Sprung, Aida Rodgers, Carolyn Strauss, Christine D'Souza Gelb, Janine Nabers, Liza Katzer, and Robbie Brenner.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Susan Sprung. I'm the CEO of the Producers Guild of America, and you are in for an incredible treat today. I think you probably all know that being a producer is one of the most difficult jobs in the business. Producers are the first people on a project and the last people off. And this incredible group of women have produced, I have to say, my favorite projects of the year. I could spend the entire session just going through their accomplishments, but instead, because I know you want to hear from them, I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves and list 2 of your credits, and we'll get started. Aida?
Aida Rodgers, Barry and Perry Mason.
Carolyn Strauss, The Last of Us, and Somebody Somewhere.
Christine D'Souza Gelb, Past Lives and Earth Mama.
Janine Nabers, Swarm in Atlanta.
Liza Katzer, Ted Lasso and Shrinking.
Robbie Brenner, Barbie and Dallas Buyers Club.
So I'm sure everyone in this room has seen Barbie and probably knows the America Ferrera speech by heart. Amazingly, because I'm probably the oldest person here, I was sort of shocked that it's still relevant and on point. And so I'd like each of you, Robbie, I'm going to start with you because it's your movie. I'd like each of you to talk about how that speech, pick any element of it, resonates with you.
When I first read the script, actually, I mean, that speech really just stood out and really, really spoke to me. And I think that even every time we screened the movie, when we tested the movie, people would stand up and scream and clap and cheer. It happens every single time, even when I went and saw it at Century City or any of the theaters. And I think because sadly, you know, women feel like they have to apologize for everything. They feel like they have to apologize, that they're not good enough, we're scared to ask, you know, all of it really just encapsulates everything I think that women feel. And so to me, yeah, I think it's a very, very powerful speech and something I think we all can relate to. And I often say to myself, like, I'm not going to apologize anymore. I'm going to say thank you instead of I'm sorry, or no, I can't do that. So.
Fantastic. Liza?
Well, thank you, Robbie, for bringing this amazing movie to all of us. I had the same experience just being in the audience and hearing that speech and welling up and looking around me and seeing people with tears in their eyes. And yeah, I mean, I of course relate to it. I think also as a producer in our field, like, I often find that as women, we're having to constantly do more than one job. So I would imagine a lot of our male counterparts probably just get to show up and do the job at hand and be a producer and shepherd a project and see it through from, you know, putting together a great team to getting it on the screen. And I think as women, you know, not only do we do that part of the job, but then especially in my younger years and coming up as a young woman in this business, constantly trying to figure out what version of myself and what version of a woman I needed to be in order to get the desired outcome, in order to appeal to often the men or the authorities that I was dealing with. So, you know, whether it was someone, you know, a writer, a director with a bigger ego, maybe supplicating myself, leaning more into my softer feminine side, and then turning around and having to walk onto a set with, you know, 100+ crew members and having to be authoritative and lean into a more masculine energy. Like, you do so much extra work trying to modulate yourself and tweak yourself to become what you think you need to be. And so I really got a lot out of that aspect of it.
Great.
Interesting. Yeah, so as a woman of color, I think imposter syndrome is kind of like embedded into your DNA sometimes, because it almost feels like the bar is always, you're great, but there's always like some sort of but or some sort of kind of like wall that's put in front of you. And so you're always trying to kind of climb over this hurdle because it's just a part of your existence. And that speech for me was really, you know, to hear America say that was like so, I just felt really seen in that moment. And I think I felt it in my bones. And we're in this community now as for me, as a woman of color, where I feel like I've apologized for so many things for so long, and now I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that anymore. And that speech meant that to me.
I think for me, it's really just one word that I think about all the time in my career and with my family is expectations. You know, I think there's so many expectations that are set for women, even the barrier entry of our ability to get into this business, whether you're an artist or you want to break into the industry on the business side of things. There's always the expectations of how you should act, and obviously, you know, for any of us, the line between being too aggressive or too soft and really just navigating your way in it. And I think as the expectations of being a mother and then also, you know, continuing your job, it's a whole nother world that you kind of step into. And I think all of us try to figure it out together because a lot of us are in that same place. But honestly, it's figuring out every day. And I think in the movie, it really just kind of encapsulated that message of how every woman feels that way and goes through it at a different point in their life, not just their career, but in every facet.
I guess, you know, for me, I've been working in this business since like 1986. And so seeing, you know, you expect, I think like you saw, that things would be really different. And I think for a while, a couple of years ago, everybody thought they would be, and now I'm not sure. But I mean, I think I was struck also by the sense of, wow, things aren't that different, really. You know, that change for some people, some groups, and you know, yes, you know, well, there's gay marriage in this, but for women somehow seem to always are some of the last to get the nod over. It's definitely thought-provoking.
I agree with all those things. I also think the part where she speaks about having to be grateful for everything is the thing that I think resonated the most with me, because no matter what you do, it's like you've achieved, you've done these things, you've really proven yourself over and over, and still you have to be grateful for it.
I am. Very good.
And by the way, this is going to be a follow-up question to you. By the way, as I ask questions, I'm going to, because I want to move questions around, if you want to weigh in on any of the questions I ask, even if I haven't called on you, please weigh in. I'd love this to be more of a conversation. But off of that, the other thing that I think women frequently feel like, and so I'm going to start with you, Aida, do you feel like you have to prove yourself over and over again?
Oh, for sure. I think on every project, every project is different, and so every project needs different things. Everybody has different skill sets, and you have to figure out as a producer, like where you can best, like fill in the gaps, I think, and where you can best be of use. And I think every single time you're proving yourself over and over again.
But do you feel like, and I'm going to toss this down to you, Liza, do you feel like is it different for men and women? Is there sort of a presumption if you're a man that you have the core competency as opposed to a woman, where you feel like you have to establish yourself on every single production?
I do feel like I have to maybe work a little harder to establish myself, and I think that's something that I'm trying to work on individually. I think a lot of men just show up as if they deserve to be there, and they own that space. And I, especially historically, would show up wondering if people know I'm a fraud and that I shouldn't actually be here, and I'm gonna mess up at any second, and oh my God, that was a stupid decision, why did I say that or do that? So I think it's both inherent, but it's also innate, and it's something that I'm aware of in myself and I continue to work on. But yeah, each time you show up, it's completely different. You're with an entirely different family, you're with an entirely different crew and creative team, and so I think there's so much work that I do, whether it's like emotional or psychological, and like examining who I'm working with and how am I gonna fit into this, and there's a lot of thought that goes into it, and I wonder if men do that. I don't know.
Okay, this I'm going to start with Christine. As a producer, how do you manage, or do you manage, to set boundaries, and is it possible to have a personal life?
You definitely have to set boundaries. I mean, I kind of a few years ago went through a change of leaving a job where I was at an agency right as I was having my first child. And I've shifted into, another career in running a company, which honestly is harder and more hours, and I care so much more about it and honestly work more intensely on the things I'm working on, but I find that I'm finding myself like in places where I want to do the work and I am so passionate about my work, but you definitely have to set the boundaries. I think one thing I learned in the pandemic, and I'm sure many of you agree, it's finding the time for your own mental health or your, working out and making sure you get that time for yourself, which I never ever did when I was at the agency. It was like, my lunch break, I was thrilled if someone canceled a lunch because then I could actually be at my office and return some emails. And that to me was my break in my day. And now it's really different. I just, I schedule my day differently. And I think we all learned that when we had time at home to really kind of balance everything again. But it's hard. I mean, I think for all of us, we're in this business not just because we fell into it. We all really struggled and started at the bottom and moved our way up, and you have to be passionate to survive in it. And so with that, piece, I think it's hard. I think sometimes I find myself still at 10 p.m. at night writing emails, and my husband's like, get off the computer. But, it's I love it, and I want to do right by everyone that I'm working with. So it's always kind of for yourself, kind of finding that balance.
Janine?
Yeah, it's hard. It's really, really hard. I think boundaries are really important, and it takes a while to learn that. Swarm, for me, was my first time as a, was my first time show running and producing on that level. And of course, even though I was pregnant, even though all of the things were happening, I just was, everyone was texting me, I was like, I'm around, don't worry about it. Like, I know there's this baby bump, but I'm cool. Like, and you stretch yourself so thin because the standard is so high, because you feel it's a miracle if you even get a show or movie produced, and to then be the leader of the pack, the world is on your shoulders. And I think at some point, especially as women, that's our MO, especially if you're ambitious. You're carrying the weight of everyone. And I felt that I wasn't just like, I was mothering this child, and mothering everyone, but I wasn't mothering myself at some point. And so yes, those boundaries are very, very important. And it's a lesson. You learn as you go.
Yeah. Robbie, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what everybody's saying. I think, for me, it's learning how to say no. I mean, we can't be everything for everyone. And I think it's like taking your power back and saying, actually, let me think about that, or I can't do that. But I agree about the boundaries, because people will push and push and push, and next thing you know, everybody's showing up at, 8 o'clock in the morning, and they expect you to be there, and then you can't drop your kids at school. And I think it's really important that you take that power back, that you show up for your children, that you do things for your family first. Everything else can wait. At the end of the day, all of these things can wait. Everybody creates so much urgency, like this has to happen now, we got to do this call now. Exactly. So I think it really is. It's pushing back and saying, no, I can't do that right now. We'll do that later.
I mean, I think that's part of the other side of the coin that you talk about in terms of deserving to be there, working, and working hard, is that having the confidence to do that is definitely something I think that you evolve to. It's really hard to start off that way, I think. And I think especially as a showrunner, I mean, that's, as a non-writing producer, I can slip in and out. I'm not that essential. But, as a showrunner, you're like every decision, and it's a huge, huge ask of anybody, even a monastic person to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's much less being pregnant, I have to say. That's remarkable. In a post-Roe world, have you changed the way you think about where you're producing and what kinds of things you produce? Carolyn, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I think about it all the time. I am chairman of Planned Parenthood Los Angeles board, so, this is front and center for me. But also as a producer and someone who's in charge of a crew, you have to think about the health and safety of your crew, and reproductive health care is essential for women's health and safety. And so where we choose to shoot, it's not just about bringing money, but it's, spending money in Georgia or wherever. It's about, can you take care of your crew? And recently we had a couple of, on a show that's upcoming, things where I'm like, I'm not going to shoot there. I won't shoot in those states.
Good for you.
I mean, ditto. Exactly. You have to. I think it's your obligation that you're going to hire women if you're a woman, and you have to make sure that they can be cared for in the place that you're filming.
It's just hard to believe we even have to think about it.
It's insane.
Yeah. Christine, I'm just going to start this one with you. How has the consolidation in the business and vertical integration affected the way you approach what you're selling, or where you're selling, or what you think of selling?
I mean, it's just gotten tougher over time. I think, companies buying each other and the streamers coming in a big way, and now, there are less and less buyers. So I think when we approach material, with our clients or on the production side, everything is an eye towards finding the right audience. And how we're kind of raising the financing or setting it up with a studio or, an independent studio, it's all part of it. I think you really have to think about the longevity of this movie and who's going to be there through the financing process, but also through distribution. And I think the material that we're looking at, more and more I feel like, without us even really trying, and I think a lot of us really it was speaking from the heart when we started this company 2 years ago, but really wanted to work with people that felt like, defining auteur for us was really someone that had a story to tell that no one else could tell but themselves. And so that's kind of been the guiding principle, and I think coming out of the pandemic, that was something that we felt like if we didn't have all the money in the world to make the biggest movies at the biggest studios, then at least we can get behind the filmmakers and the writers and directors that really had something to say and felt like it could break through the noise and hopefully make it through awards and have that potential to break outside just New York and LA into other states and especially internationally.
And what about for those folks in television? Does it impact? So Janine first.
I think especially post-strike, people are just really scared to make original stories. It's constant. It's a thing that you are constantly, it's a battle you're fighting every day. But at the same time, we are in an industry that has fatigue because you're regurgitating and recycling some of the same stories. And so as a writer and a producer, when I come in and I pitch something and they lean in, but then they're like, oh, we're too scared to make this. That's more of a reason to make it.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm always going to want to do subversive, provocative stories. That's just who I am. Maybe I'll be on the street one day because Hollywood will be like, no, we're done.
We'll take you on the film side. Just come back to film.
But yeah, it's definitely. I wish I could say that it's getting better, but I think we're in a very confused kind of stalled out stage right now, and I'm hoping that
I think it's
all
getting
of
worse,
these.
don't you?
It does. It feels like it's getting worse, which is
I think there's fewer and fewer people willing to buy with their guts, and people, it's, does it fit this rubric or this algorithm, and who's gonna, and sometimes the biggest thing, the things that are the most exciting are the things you just roll the dice on and see what happens.
exactly.
Yeah.
But everything's so expensive that it's hard to do that now, and I get it.
Yeah, I really feel the restriction as well in TV, and I think we had such a boom. There was so much forward progress, and it was so exciting for probably like a solid decade, just having all these new stories and more specificity and diversity. And I do feel like things are restricting. Buyers are taking less chances, especially after 2 strikes, especially after the pandemic. And so I think our biggest challenge is really, how do we take that specificity and all of that forward progress and package it in a way that still will have broad or wide-ranging appeal? And I think for a long time, broad and commercial were sort of dirty words, but especially with a show like Ted Lasso, I really found that there are ways to still get that uniqueness and that specificity across, but still have accessibility and reach a wider audience. And, to your point too, Carolyn, nobody really knows. Like, everybody passed on Ted Lasso. Netflix passed on it twice. Like, everybody said no, and Apple had just started doing original content. We're like, sure, we'll roll the dice. And it became something that people liked. So nobody knows. You really do have to take those chances.
I totally
on things.
agree. Nobody
knows.
And you have to have hope. I think that you have to still go out there and pitch the shows that mean something to you, because if you don't, then what's the point? Why are we all here?
Well, and what I find so interesting is every one of you is currently working on something that might not seem like the obvious choice, and it's the best content and product and both television and movies that we have this year, which is pretty remarkable. So you're clearly figuring it out. So Carolyn, how do you think about finding the right partner for projects that you're working on?
Well, I think, sometimes things come to me, sometimes I go to people. I mean, I think Somebody Somewhere is a really good example, because I think that was a thing that I knew was going to be a small show, and I think that, and Bridget and I had been talking about it, and we thought, okay, we have to do this on the cheap, because it can't withstand the pressure for, for people to spend money. So we're like Duplass brothers, so those guys do cheap stuff. so I mean, it was kind of, in that, and then finding writers that we knew could capture her voice and sort of look. To me, that's really the hardest thing, is finding the writers. I see an open writing assignment, and I'm just like, oh. But really finding a writer who can write with authorship and embody a project is always the hardest thing for me, personally.
Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's about finding those authentic voices, those singular, bold voices. I mean, when I think it went out to the trades that Greta was going to do Barbie, people were like, what's that movie going to be? That seems so weird. And I was like, no, that's actually the perfect choice. I mean, have you seen her movies? Yes, it's exciting. And for me, when things feel a little scary, I run at them. I love that. That is like when you go, I'm doing the right thing, when your hair's standing up and you're like, okay, everybody's going to think I'm a little crazy, but like, this is it. So you have to really listen to your voice and your conviction, and I think it is just finding these amazing writers with these different voices. There are audiences for all of these things if you do things in a way that feels different and sticky and interesting, and so that is the way we're approaching all of the IP at Mattel.
Liza?
Yeah, I was going to say there is a little bit of when you know, like when you hear a pitch or you talk to a writer about an idea or you read a script, it's like you just kind of know if it's something special or not. And I totally agree with you, Carolyn. It all starts on the page. Like, if the writing isn't there, if the foundation isn't there, it's usually going to crumble. And so, especially in talking about this more restricted landscape, finding the right writer is so important, and I think a lot of the really exciting stories are coming from maybe some younger, less experienced writers, some newer voices, and so what I'm really trying to make sure I do at this point is make sure they have all of the support they need, so maybe that means pairing them with a more seasoned showrunner, someone that can really do the job to make sure that it goes the distance, because it is so hard to go the distance, and amazing ideas just kind of fall away all the time just because they don't have that foundation. So it's kind of how we're tackling it.
Janine, you want to?
I think it is really important to find people that are cut from the same cloth as you. Finding your tribe is like, it takes a while. And when I started working on Atlanta and then Swarm with Donald, he's an incredible artist, but he's also, he's like Donald Glover and Childish Gambino. He's like two people, like you're making a show with someone who is, just everything they do is artful and thoughtful, and that experience was incredible. And I think finding partnerships like that is key.
Yeah. Do you want to?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would add, it made me think about this movie I worked on a few years ago with this director, Lulu Wang, who had written a movie called The Farewell, which played Sundance and was this incredible kind of moment, I think, for female filmmakers, because she had written it. It was based on her own true story. And I remember at that festival, it was just this moment where everyone started realizing a lot of the women that were at the festival were writing about their own lives. They really had to find the thing that was different. It wasn't go find that genre and put these, characters together and figure out the story. It was like, what do they know? And for so long, women haven't been able to tell those stories. And I feel like everything I've been involved in since then has had a little piece of that, has had that, family story or relationship or anything that's really profoundly, touched them, that they felt like they needed to bring that out into the world. And I think it has a resonance out there, and I think people connect because there are stories that all of us experience. So it's been a beautiful thing, I think, over time, at least on the film side. While there are very big movies and there are the Marvel films, there's also, I think, this great sector of movies of real authored stories.
Great. You want to? Aida?
Yeah, I think for me, you have to work with people that you resonate with, that you agree with, that you can get along with, because we work really hard. This is really challenging work. You have to be really committed, and you're in the trenches, and it's sometimes great and it's sometimes not great. So first and foremost, it's like, can I go the distance with these people, and writers, directors, all of it. Can I go the distance? Is this going to be a relationship through good and bad that something beautiful can come out of, And I think that, and then the stories. If the story resonates with you, and if the subject resonates with you, then I think that's the magic.
That's great. Okay, I realize we're getting short on time, but I'd like to ask each of you to answer one or two questions. You can pick which one you want. What piece of advice would you give a younger producer starting out in the business, or what do you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
I think that meet as many people as you can. Keep a list of everybody that you would love to work with as you see things that resonate, that speak to you. And then for me, sorry, the second part.
The second part is, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you first started?
I guess lighten up a little, like it's gonna be okay. Everything was so serious, and everything was the end of the world at the beginning, and it's like, I don't know, with some perspective and some time, you realize like, oh, my life matters, and what I wanna do in my life matters, and my personal, the balance, the work-life balance that we were talking about, all of that matters. So just ease up on yourself. Like, everything's gonna resolve itself. You're gonna find a solution. Even to the most challenging problems, there is a solution.
Well, I agree with all of that, and I'm going to take that advice myself. A couple of other things. I think the number one thing is, if you cannot have fun doing this job, don't do it, because it is It's hard, yeah, but it's also, you're making TV shows and movies, and it should be frickin' fun, you know? And I think that shows in the work, you know? It shows on the screen when you're having fun making the stuff. And sometimes you can't control whether it's gonna be good or bad, and so you might as well just enjoy the process. And the other thing, you know, when people ask, what's your advice? I think my number one piece of advice is your notes are your opinions. They are not facts. And that, you know, and when you're working with writers and directors and creative people, especially as a producer, you know, there is not a right or a wrong, and finding a creative solution to things. If you're going to find a creative solution to things, I think it's important to keep that in mind. That's all.
So I think my lesson is, which I tell people over time, I think a lot of people get stuck when they come into the industry, whether they decide that they're going to be a director or they're going to go be an agent or a producer. You know, I've always told people, like, try different things, because, you know, you could start out in one place and end in another place. And I think a lot of people get stuck when they start in one position in this industry and they're not happy and they're not having fun. Like, that is the moment to go work with new people and do something different, because there is a place for you if you have that passion in film and TV and want to work with creatives, or you are creative. It's continually giving yourself the ability to shift what that trajectory might be, and, you know, don't have the expectations, you know, so high for yourself. You can make choices and change. And then I think, sorry, what was the second part? What do
What
Wish
do
I knew
you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
I mean, I feel like there's so many things. I think something that I was just talking about the other day was just like this idea of when you're reading something or looking at a project, I think it can be very easy to get involved in something because of all the parts and all the pieces that are coming together. And over the course of my career, I've really distilled it down to the piece of material, and is this something that I think is so undeniable that I have to be involved? Like, the other pieces will come with it, the right director, the right producers, the right studio, all those pieces, actors, like, all the pieces will come together, but making sure you're really sticking to your guns. I mean, it's why you're in the rooms you're going to be in as you continue to scale in the industry. You need to use that voice, and that voice is identifying things that you're passionate about.
I would say be kind to the people that you meet in this industry, because this community is very small and your career is very long. And the people that you might think are that are competing with you are people that could employ you one day or be working with you on a project as a producer or another writer. So just know that and understand that, and treat everyone with kindness and respect. And the other thing is, if you are a woman, if you are a person of color, and you walk into a room and you pitch your project and there are no other women and there are no other people of color, you do not have to take the note. And know your worth and stand your ground respectfully. Respectfully.
I love the kindness rule and the no asshole policy. That's an important one. Always take that to every project. I think a piece of advice that I would give my younger self, or myself currently, is that it's okay to say, I don't know. That can also be an answer. You don't have to have all the answers all the time, and you can also take some time to think about it. Another thing is find people that will laugh with you when everything hits the fan. And I've been at my current company for a really long time because it was the first place in this business that I started working where things would go terribly wrong and everyone would just start laughing and like making fun of the situation. And I was like, oh yeah, this is the way TV should be. We're not curing cancer, it's comedy. Let's laugh about it. It's not that serious. Yeah, those are my things.
I think for me, it's pretty simple. Just don't give up. If you believe in something, have the perseverance. The rock is going to keep on falling on you. You guys got to keep on pushing it up the hill. I tried to get Dallas Buyers Club made for 20 years, and every door closed, and everybody said, nobody wants to make a movie about a cowboy who contracts HIV, but ultimately I stayed with it, and we got it together, and we made the movie, and 7 nominations later. But I think it's just about believing. If you have an idea that you believe in, someone else will believe in it, and it will happen. Stick with it and have perseverance.
That's really the perfect note to end on. I have to say, I know we could spend hours talking to each of you, but I just can't wait to see what you're all going to do next. It's been fantastic. Thank you.